Hello, everybody. I'm Jane Stavum, the superintendent of Lake Washington School District for about one more month and a few days. And with me today are all of the wonderful people that I get to work with, and the people really who are kind of overseeing all of the work that has been done, but more importantly, that's coming up as we start thinking about next year. But before we get into that and just kind of give you a glimpse of the planning, I want everybody to introduce themselves. And as you introduce yourself, I want you to talk about maybe one of your most favorite things that we would normally be doing this spring that we don't get to because of the closure. So I'm going to ask Barbara Posthumus if she would start.
Thank you, Jane. I'm Barbara Posthumus, Associate Superintendent of Business and Support Services. And one of the favorite things in the spring is just all the year-end celebrations that we do, retirements and graduations. Those are the things that I'm going to miss.
And we usually have a lot of graduations in one day, and we kind of have a whole day-long celebration, and we're all missing that like many people are. Shannon, you're up next.
I'm Shannon Parthmer. I'm the Director of Communications for the district. And I agree that all the end of year celebrations, especially the retirement celebration and just getting to honor the people that have worked in our district for a number of years. It's really fun to sit and watch them be honored in a different way.
And they have really good stories usually during those events. We're going to miss some of those stories this year. Matt Gillingham.
I'm Matt Gillingham, Associate Superintendent of Student and Community Services. And spring for me in schools, I just love getting out and watching track meets or baseball and softball games, and just the opportunity to see kids out playing. Looking forward to the day we get to do that again.
Yeah, track and field days and all of those sitting out in the hot sun and getting more sun than you realized at some of those events. Mike Van Orden.
I'll repeat the end of year graduations. It's an opportunity to really see the culmination of the efforts of our students and families and teachers. And then this year I have two daughters, one who's graduating from high school and one who's graduating from college. So we're going to get to participate in the virtual graduations like our families. It'll be an interesting year for sure.
Yeah, everybody's trying to make them special. But there's huge sense of loss for everybody that we don't get the regular ways of celebrating like we always have. Yeah. And John Holman.
Yeah, John Holman, current Deputy Superintendent and incoming Superintendent as of July 1, as Dr. Stavum transitions to her new situation.
Yeah.
You know, annually what I look forward to is our graduations. And one of the things I absolutely look forward to are the student speeches, because I love to hear the comments that our students make. We will still get to hear those this year. It will just be in a different venue. So really looking forward to seeing those in video format this year, and to celebrate with all of our graduating seniors.
Yeah, you know, I think not everybody realizes, you know, graduation is a huge thing, but that is really the culminating event of the work of everybody from, you know, birth through preschool and elementary and middle and high school. It's not just high school, and it's that completion that we are all really mourning this year. And I think as I look at kids when they go across the stage, I always think, oh, you know, it's such an awesome responsibility that we all have to prepare kids to go into their future. And we hope that we've done that work well, and not getting to see them kind of launch is disappointing. But we're hoping to see some really great videos and see what the kids have created. And I think it'll be as great as it possibly can be. So, you know, difficult year. We all started out with a regular kind of a school year. We had a new strategic plan, our Elevate strategic plan, and we were off and running with the initiatives that are part of that plan. And now in late February and early March, we found ourselves in a situation like school districts have really never encountered before, at least during our lifetime. And we've had to really do some complex work. We've had decisions that have been made about all kinds of different things. And I think when we start looking ahead, we know that there are difficult decisions to come. And so today we want to just give people kind of a glimpse of how we're starting that work and how people will have some of their questions answered between now and when school would typically start in the fall. We also know this has been a very political time in our country, as people have viewed the closures across the nation, and people have all kinds of opinions, and we want to know how people are thinking and feeling as we move along. So we're going to talk about that too. Ultimately, we all know that our responsibility is to educate children, and we've put some fast things together for the closure, but we know moving ahead, we have to be very intentional about the opportunities that we're going to create. So I'm going to talk with each of you and just give us a glimpse of a big question that I'm going to pose, and then we'll be talking a little bit about how people will know what we're working on an ongoing basis. So Mike, I want to start with you. You are overseeing everything really with teaching and learning. How will we know what's going to happen with teaching and learning when we come back in the fall? What's that going to potentially look like?
Yeah, I think while there are many things that are unknown, and the picture will get clearer as we get closer to the school year, the one thing we do know is that schools won't be the same when we return. And so really what we're doing is planning for multiple possibilities. And we're being very intentional about consulting with what's happening at the state level around guidance for how schools and districts should return. We're also looking nationally because some districts around the country are a little bit further ahead, and we're looking internationally as well. I think ultimately there's really 3 or 4 different scenarios, and then within those there are lots of details. So one our ideal would be in person, but even in person won't look the same as it's looked in the past. We may be starting sooner, starting later, have extended time, have different windows of time in the school year, and so we're going to be needing to think about what do schedules look like if we're in person. Within that too, as we've been thinking about things like how do students interact with each other? How do adults interact with students when we're back in person, when we're still in a pandemic? And so thinking about how do we teach routines and procedures for interacting with each other while we maintain an instructional program will all be factors that we're considering. At the same time, we anticipate as well there will likely be some element of remote learning. And that might be remote learning for students and staff who are in high-risk groups. It might be remote learning for periods of time. If we have to shut down, if there's a surge, for example, it might be a combination of remote and in-person learning, which is called a hybrid approach. And so what we're doing right now is we're planning for that as well. So that we want to make sure that our kids are really well prepared if we have to close for a period of time. We want to make sure our instructional programs are much tighter than they were, given that we now have more time to prepare for them, and make sure that we're really well equipped to deliver a much more robust, high quality instructional program, whether kids are in a school building or at home, and then work on really how do we tie all of those together. So we have teams of teachers and administrators. We'll be bringing community members in as well to plan for all of these different scenarios. And then as the picture from our state agencies starts to get cleaner and tighter, we'll be able to match up our plans with what eventually will be probably directions that we're given. So lots of planning happening there, and we'll have more information coming out about that information before we leave in June.
Yeah, it's those contingencies of everything from one extreme to kind of another, and I think that holds true in so many areas. And we hope to kind of narrow those pictures as we move forward. But I think that's one of the frustrations that people feel is everybody, we all naturally kind of know what's the plan, what are we doing, give me the details, and just tell me what's going to happen. And I think that's been a frustration for everybody, even in our communities with businesses that have faced some of those same realities. Just tell me when I can reopen and tell me what I have to do so that I can continue on with things. So we understand that frustration, and we'll try to do everything we can to help people see that way forward. Matt Gillingham, we've got a lot of logistical things that have to happen, and we have teams that have assembled to start looking at the real nitty-gritty kinds of plans. Can you talk about that structure and some of the things that those teams will help with?
Yeah, so we learned a lot this spring in having to essentially completely shift to an online model. And so one of the things we've been doing this spring is looking at how do we work well as a team. So where can we improve? So we have two core teams that are helping to drive a lot of the work that Mike was talking about, which is planning for these different scenarios. So we have a return to school coordinating committee that's an interdisciplinary group, because a decision made around instruction has to interact with transportation and our human resources and thinking about athletics. And it's just, there's all so many different layers. So we've got an interdisciplinary group that's looking ahead and trying to envision how do we not only engage in learning in different scenarios, but how do we actually try to come out stronger and do a better job for all of our students. We also have a emergency coordinating committee that we put into place this spring. And one of the things that I think is going to be a bit of a challenge for us and for our community is we may enter with one model in mind. And as Mike talked about, if there's a spike of cases, we may have to quickly pivot to a completely different model. And so can't just have the plans in place, but we also need to have a team that's able to be monitoring and help us quickly shift if we need to. And I think we learned some things about being able to do that well this spring. And each of those teams Mike talked about is a little bit of how do we think about engaging our stakeholders. And so we'll be coming out to our community over the next month and the summer and asking questions and creating space so that we can hear about the concerns and the interests of our parents and our students, because that's really going to be important for us to say what type of school do we want to return to. And then for us to be able to look back at kind of both the guidance and the constraints that we have to operate within.
Yeah. And what's my new favorite word?
Pivot.
Pivot and toggle. Pivot and toggle we keep using. And the notion is being more agile, because I don't think any of us felt any sense of agility as we were closing and trying to get things up and running. And parents haven't felt that way always either. Single sign-on is something we hear, streamlining the landing places, all of those great pieces of feedback that we've gotten are what we're now trying to incorporate. So Shannon, you and your communications team play a big part in how we push information to places where people can get that on our website and other places. How will people know what's happening over the summer leading into the school year? What are some tips and some things that they should be paying attention to?
Yeah, we plan to continue to provide regular updates on all of the work of the planning committees. We're going to have a whole section on our website called Fall Planning, and that's going to be the place to go for any updated information about the work of the different committees that are working on this. We'll also have several opportunities, as Matt mentioned, for community engagement on this topic. We want to hear from our parents, we want to hear from our students, what exactly is working and not working for them, and how we can make it easier to come back in the fall. And then just making sure people are aware of the website, the social media feeds, all of those places that we can go, or we can post things for people to get information about what's happening in our district. So we'll continue to send emails to parents. We'll continue with our Connections newsletter. So there's a lot of ways to get the information. And then also the schools will be a good resource for parents on what's happening in the fall and how that will look at their school.
Yeah, that connection to schools has to stay in place. And people have heard me say that many times, is school is still that hub. And so we want a variety of places. And we know people also like to take things that are useful when we push it out, and then they push it to their social media platforms. And so we want some usable things that they can then have travel around in all of those places that help people stay informed. So we appreciate that. It's another thing that we learned, I think, in all of this is that text messaging is a really effective way that gets to even more people than what sometimes are emails, and that people have to help us by keeping their information up to date in Skyward. And so we have the right phone numbers and the right links to people, because that data going out is only as good as those updated pieces of information we have. So families really need to help us with that. Barbara, you oversee all things district finance, and there are a lot of things out there. People wondering, what's the fiscal impact going to be to a district, and are we cutting staff, and are we cutting programs? And give us just a kind of a picture about the financial health of our district right now and the things we're thinking about leading into next year.
Yeah, our district is in a good place financially. Our finances are stable. We have incurred additional costs due to the closure, but they have been manageable. The state is continuing our funding for this school year. We're going to move forward and we're moving forward with developing our budget for next year, but we're moving forward with caution. We're monitoring our enrollment, our revenues, and our expenditures closely so that we can make adjustments as needed. We're also working closely with OSPI to ensure that that our funding is stable going into next year.
Good. I think, you know, districts always look different from one financial picture to the other. And I think part of the confidence that our community is looking for is that we're going to be able to continue to provide a high quality education, and those programs that have really drawn students to want to be part of our school district. Families move here to attend our schools. They want to make sure that those things aren't going away. And I think we can say with confidence that they are not. But we also know that we have to align things this next year around all of the expectations for safety and for keeping people in scenarios that allow them to be as safe as possible. But we also know people love using our tennis courts and our fields, and they want to be at their schools. They want to be in activities. People are already asking about what are we going to do next fall for, you know, our sports team or our field trips. And those are big questions that we're in the process of thinking about and planning for, yet still we don't have the firm guidance that we will hopefully even a month from now to begin anticipating those things. But we hope to say yes to as much as possible, I know. The person who's going to be saying yes to all of those things for next year, as of July 1st, is Dr. John Holman. And John, you and I are experiencing a transition. It makes it a little easier because you're already here, and we already do a lot of things together and on the same meetings and planning. And you have been an awesome deputy, so I know you are going to be an outstanding superintendent. But those transition points are also part of leading this work into next year. So talk about where you see things going and how you're going to be interacting with the community as you take your new leadership position.
Yeah, I've thought a lot about leadership during this time, and leadership during good times is challenging, and leadership during challenging times is even more difficult. And I'm so proud of how our district leaders have been working through this with their communities and their staff, and trying to maintain some semblance of consistency, normalcy as much as possible. Our building leaders, our central leaders, and we have an executive cabinet that is extremely thoughtful and trying to think and make plans that are reasonable in alignment with requirements and what's best for students. And so all of those are, again, very challenging in normal times, and during these times it really causes us to go back to our core values. What are we about? How do we engage not just our internal stakeholders but our external stakeholders as well? I also want to touch on the fact that our school board is acutely aware of the plans and processes that we are working on. We scheduled additional board meetings this spring to keep them apprised of all of the work we're doing, and we continue to provide them with updates because they're a key piece of our community connection. Both Matt and Mike talked about some of the processes that we're going through this spring and into the summer, and those processes do have external stakeholders, parents, and reaching out to community, because what school looks like next year we don't exactly know, but we know it will be better if we have more stakeholder voices as part of the process to develop that. And so I look forward to this challenge because I want what is absolutely best for our students, and what's best for our students is a well-articulated plan, a plan that's well communicated so that our parents know what to expect, that we are empathetic, because every family is going through something unique and something different given their specific circumstances. We have families that have lost jobs. We have families that are in need who maybe have never been in need before. And so just being really thoughtful about that, because as a community, it's all of our responsibility to lift one another up. And so it's a difficult time, and it's a time for us as a community to come together and work together. And that's how the educational component of this situation will have the best possible outcome, is by us working together. And that's internally at all levels of our organization and working with our external and community stakeholders. So it's a tough task, and but I'm proud of the people that are here to do that work and to help lead that work. So, and I know you've laid the groundwork for all of this, Dr. Stavum, and we will continue that work moving forward.
Well, I have all of the confidence in the world in everybody here, and it is a team and it's a community. It's a community that cares, and this community cares deeply about the well-being of our families and our students, and we want people to continue to come together. And this has been a long haul. I mean, from early March to June 19th is a really long stretch of time to be kind of in this, parallel universe of learning. And I think it's really difficult for people when there's no hard end in sight of, this is going to be over on this date and then everything goes back to normal. It's just not that way. So that's tough to hang through, but we do that when a lot of people care about the best interest of the people who matter most, and that is our children. So together, district staff, our board of directors, our community, and all of our families are going to find the year next year, maybe somewhat different, but still very, very focused on doing the best for our kids. And we appreciate all of the ways that people have contributed to our ability to keep going in the face of this, and all the work you're doing at home with your children. I mean, that is tough stuff, and our staff have stepped up and tried to equip people in all of the ways possible. So we're going to hang in there together. In a month or so, I'm going to say goodbye, turn it over to great hands, and you're going to continue to be a district with a legacy of excellence. So thank you to everybody, and watch for that information to be coming your way over the coming weeks.